Shaniqua Devro sat in front of her smartphone, which was mounted on a small tripod. The square room in her and her husband's apartment in South Chicago was her makeshift studio. The walls, covered with cheap floral wallpaper, created an almost comical contrast to the young woman's ambitions. "Hi, my lovelies." Shaniqua blew a kiss to the camera. "As promised, today I'm going to show you a new makeup technique I picked up from Farrah Abbott. It's going to be amazing." The girl adjusted her long braids with purple strands and pulled a small plastic container with cosmetics closer. She was only 24 years old, but her eyes showed the determination of someone who knows what they want from life. "Okay, let's start with primer," she said, pulling out a small tube. "I know a lot of people think this is an unnecessary step, but trust me, it will completely change your game." Comments began to appear at the bottom of the screen. "You're the best, girl." "Finally, you're online. Show us what you bought at Sephora yesterday." Shaniqua smiled, noticing the growing number of viewers. 218, 235. It was a normal number for her, but she dreamed of thousands. The thousands that would allow her to escape this neighborhood where gunfire was commonplace, and dreams died faster than spring flowers bloomed. "Lady Divine, thanks for the super chat. $5 is very generous." Shaniqua sent another air kiss. "I'll be sure to show off the new shadows I bought, but first let's make the perfect base." The door behind her back suddenly swung open. Latrell Bradford, her husband, appeared in the frame, tall, with a sturdy build and a disgruntled expression. His work overalls were stained with machine oil, and his hands still showed traces of dirt from the machine shop. "Are you doing that again?" His voice sounded low, with barely contained irritation. Shaniqua visibly tensed but tried to keep a smile. "Guys, look who's joined us. My husband just got back from work." "I ask you, are you sitting in front of that damn camera again instead of making dinner?" Latrell moved closer to the tripod, his face now clearly visible in the frame. The comments suddenly changed. "Uh-oh, drama's brewing. That husband of yours never gives you a moment's peace. Already recording it." "Latrell, I'm busy. I'm Lev," Shaniqua said quietly, but the microphone still picked up her words. "Can we talk later?" "Talk later?" His voice got louder. "You say the same thing every day. We'll talk later, Latrell. I'm busy, Latrell." "And when does that later come?" Shaniqua straightened up, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Look, I'm trying to build a career. This could be our ticket out of this hole." "Why can't you just support me?" Latrell snorted, looking around the table littered with makeup. "A career? Are you serious? Sitting around all day smearing that crap all over your face and you think that's a career?" He grabbed one of the shadow palettes. "Do you know how much this shit costs? $70. 70. Put it down." Shaniqua jumped up, trying to grab the palette out of his hands. "That's my work makeup." "Work makeup?" Latrell laughed bitterly. "The only job you can get with that is at a strip club. Maybe that's why you're dressed like that? Are you going to go out after the broadcast to make some money?" Shaniqua's face contorted with anger. "What did you say? Say it again if you dare." The viewers in the chat room were ecstatic. "What a show. I haven't seen such drama in a long time. Someone take notes. I've seen the messages they send you," Latrell continued, tossing the palette back on the table. "You're so beautiful. I want to meet you." And you respond to them, flirting. "You think I'm stupid? Those are my followers. That's how all bloggers communicate." Shaniqua shook her hands. "You're paranoid. And you know what? Maybe if you spent more time with me instead of your work delays, I wouldn't have to talk to strangers." Latrell's face darkened. "What do you mean? You think I don't know where you go after work?" Shaniqua crossed her arms over her chest. "The whole extra hours thing is bullshit. You've been to Zendaya's, haven't you?" Latrell took a step back, clearly taken aback by this accusation. "What are you talking about?" "Don't pretend. I've seen the way you two look at each other. My so-called best friend and my husband." Shaniqua's eyes filled with tears, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "Javante saw you leaving her apartment last Thursday." Latrell clenched his fists. "That junkie Javante? Really? You believe him more than me?" "Why wouldn't I? Unlike you, at least he always tells me the truth." They stared at each other for a few seconds, breathing heavily. Shaniqua was the first to break the silence. "You know what? I'm tired of this. Every time I try to do something for our future, you turn everything into a scandal. Maybe we should—" "What?" Latrell interrupted her. "Maybe we should what? Break up? Is that what you want?" Shaniqua turned away without answering, which only made Latrell angrier. "Fine." He turned around and headed for the door. "Go on with your show. Maybe one of your fans will take you out to dinner since I'm such a terrible husband." The door slammed shut behind him with such force that the tripod with the smartphone shook. There was silence in the room, broken only by Shaniqua's heavy breathing. She slowly turned back to the camera, as if only now remembering that she had been on live TV the whole time. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with her foundation and mascara. "Sorry about that, guys." Her voice shook. "I think we're done for the day. Yep. I need some time. I'll be back later, I promise." Shaniqua reached for the phone and the screen went blank. 30 minutes later, as it was beginning to get dark outside the window, Shaniqua turned the live feed back on. Her face was washed, but her eyes still looked reddened. "Hello everyone back." She tried to smile, but the smile came out strained. "Sorry about that dramatic moment earlier. It happens, right? All couples fight." Comments started popping up at breakneck speed. "Are you okay? Where is he now? Don't let him treat you like that. That was harsh." Shaniqua pushed her hair back and took a deep breath. "Look, I know a lot of you are concerned, but it's okay. Really. Latrell he had a rough day at work. He's not always like this." She picked up her glass of water and took a few sips. "To be honest, it's my fault too. We've fallen on hard times. The rent's gone up, the bills too. Latrell's working like hell, trying to make ends meet, and she stammered. "I'm just dreaming of a better life, you know." Suddenly, Shaniqua stopped talking and turned her head, as if she heard something outside the frame. "Latrell, you're back!" She stood up, stepping out of the camera's view. "Look, we need to talk." There was a muffled sound like footsteps. "Who's there?" Shaniqua's voice sounded wary. For a few seconds, no one was visible in the frame, just an empty chair and a table with scattered makeup. Then there was a strange sound, something between a thump and a thud. "What are you doing?" Shaniqua shrieked from somewhere in the frame. "No! Stop!" There was another bang, louder than the last. It was followed by the sound of a falling body and Shaniqua's shrill scream, which was suddenly cut off. For a few seconds, there was silence on the air. Then footsteps were heard approaching the camera. Someone's hand appeared in the frame for a moment, and the live feed cut off. Patrol cars with blinkers jammed a quiet street in Chicago's South Side. The red and blue lights reflected in the windows of the shabby houses, attracting the attention of neighbors who, despite the late hour, spilled out onto the street. A police cordon had already been set up around the unassuming two-story building that housed Shaniqua and Latrell's apartment. Detective Obasi Tambo parked his shabby sedan behind the patrol cars and got out slowly, surveying the scene. In his 42 years, he had seen too many scenes like this in his home neighborhood. Every time, it was the same thing. Another life lost, another tragedy, another statistic in the department's reports. "What do we have here?" he asked, approaching the young officer on duty at the front door. "Shaniqua Devereaux, 24 years old," he replied, checking his notebook. Around 9:15 p.m., dispatch received several calls from people claiming to have witnessed a live murder. "Liv?" Tambo raised an eyebrow. "Yes, sir. The victim was broadcasting on Facebook. Apparently she was a blogger." Tambo nodded and put on latex gloves before entering the building. "Husband? Kids?" he asked as he walked up the stairs. "Husband is Latrell Bradford, 28 years old. No children, no husband found at the scene." Tambo stopped at the second-floor landing where the forensics team was already working. Camera flashes illuminated the cramped hallway. "Who discovered the body?" Patrolmen Johnson and Martinez were the first to arrive. The door was unlocked. The detective entered the apartment. The small living room connected to the kitchen was crowded with uniformed men. They parted, giving Tambo access to the body. Shaniqua Devereaux was lying on the floor, partially hidden from entry by the kitchen counter. A pool of blood had spread on the floor around her head, soaking into the cheap linoleum. There was a heavy metal object lying next to her body, a movie camera-shaped figurine that had obviously been the murder weapon. She'd been hit on the head from behind, the medical examiner said without waiting for a question. Several blows. Death was almost instantaneous. Time of death was sometime between 9 and 9:30 in the evening. Tambo slowly walked around the crime scene, scrutinizing every detail. On the table by the window was a makeshift tripod with smartphone marks on it. Next to it lay makeup, carelessly strewn about as if in a hurry or in anger. "Have you checked the security footage yet?" he asked one of the officers. "There are no cameras in the building, Detective. There's only a convenience store on the corner of the block with outside surveillance. We've already requested the footage." Tambo nodded. "Look for Bradford. Check every bar, diner, gas station within a 5-mile radius. Canvass the neighborhood. See where he might have gone." While the officers carried out his orders, Tambo walked over to a technician who was setting up a laptop on the kitchen table. "I need the tapes of those broadcasts, both of them." "Already working on it, Detective. The first one's about 40 minutes long, the second one's only 6. They're saved on the Facebook server. Put them up on the screen." The technician nodded and started the first recording a few minutes later. Tambo settled back in his chair, watching the young woman, still recently full of life and plans, do her usual broadcast. He watched the argument develop, absorbing every detail, every word thrown, every gesture. He was particularly interested in the mention of 2 names, Zendaya and Javante. He made a note in his notebook, then asked the technician to move on to the second entry. The short, only 6-minute broadcast ended frighteningly abruptly. The last shots were of an empty chair, then the sounds of a struggle, a scream, and finally a hand flashed in front of the camera. Tambo asked to scroll through the last 30 seconds again, taking in the fleeting appearance of the killer's hand in the frame, but the image was too blurry to determine anything specific. "Print me a list of all the commentators and screenshots of the chat during both broadcasts," he ordered. "And find me those Zendaya and Javante." An hour after arriving on the scene, Detective Tambo was already interviewing neighbors. Most of them had heard the altercation, but no one had seen anything. Typical reaction in this neighborhood is to stay out, keep your head down, pretend nothing's going on. "You must be the Javante," Tambo said, knocking on the door of the apartment across the hall. The door opened, revealing the wary face of a man in his early 30s. His eyes were red and watery. "Who's asking?" "Detective Obasi Tambo, Chicago Police Department." He showed his badge. "I need to ask you some questions about Shaniqua Devro and Latrell Bradford." Javante Arimbo reluctantly let the detective into his cluttered apartment. The air inside was musty, with the distinct sweet-smelling odor of marijuana. "I didn't see anything," Javante said at once, taking a seat on the worn couch. "But did you hear it?" Tambo remained standing, looking around the room. Crumbs of some kind of powder were lying on the coffee table. "During the first argument, Shaniqua mentioned that you saw her husband leaving the apartment of a certain Zendaya. Is that true?" Javante was visibly tense. "Look, Detective, I don't want any trouble. Shaniqua is dead, Mr. Arimbo. Trouble has already happened. Anything you say can help us find her killer." Javante rubbed his face with his hands, then nodded. "Yes, I saw Latrell leaving Zendaya, not just on Thursday, several times. They obviously had something." "And you told Shaniqua about it?" "Of course I did. She deserved to know the truth." Tambo looked at Javante closely. "Were you close to Shaniqua?" Javante's cheeks flushed slightly. "We were friends, neighbors. I kept an eye on her when that asshole Latrell didn't show up at home." "Where do you think Latrell might be right now?" Javante shrugged. "Maybe Big Mike's on Evans Street. He hangs out there a lot, or Zendaya's. She lives 3 blocks away on Princeton Avenue, apartment 22. Tambo made a note in his notebook. "When was the last time you saw or heard Shaniqua today?" "I heard them fighting this afternoon. The walls here are thin, you know." Then Latrell left, slamming the door so hard the plaster fell. Javante faltered. "About 9 o'clock I went out to get cigarettes. I saw someone go into their apartment, but I couldn't see who. It was already dark." "Did it look like Latrell? In build? The way he walked?" Javante frowned, remembering. "I'm not sure. Maybe he did. But I can't say for sure." Tambo closed his notebook and handed Javante his card. "If you think of anything else, give me a call. Anytime. Leaving Cavante's apartment, the detective radioed the patrolman. Check Big Mike's on Evans Street. Bradford could be there. The next item on the list was Zendaya Clinskiles. Tambo got into his car and headed to the address listed. On the way, he looked at the printouts of viewer comments from both broadcasts that the technician had given him. There was nothing particularly noteworthy in the comments for the first broadcast. The usual cheers, then surprise when the argument started, and a mixture of support and condemnation when the conflict escalated. But in the comments on the second broadcast, Tambo noticed some disturbing reports. Several viewers wrote that they saw some sort of shadow behind Shaniqua's back seconds before she turned around. Someone even claimed to have recognized the hand that flashed at the end as a woman's hand, not a man's, judging by the manicure. Tambo made a new notation in his notebook and parked outside a shabby 3-story building on Princeton Avenue. Apartment 22 was located on the second floor. He knocked on the door, and after a few seconds a young woman opened it for him. Zendaya Clinskiles looked tearful, her eyes red and puffy. "Detective Obasi Tambo, Chicago Police Department," he introduced himself, showing his badge. "I need to ask you some questions about Shaniqua Devereaux." "Oh my God." Zendaya covered her mouth with her hand. "Is it true? Is she really dead?" "I'm afraid so, Miss Clinskiles. May I come in?" Zendaya stepped back, allowing the detective inside. Her apartment was considerably neater and cozier than Yavante's, but about the same size as Shaniqua's. "I can't believe it." Zendaya sank down on the couch, blotting her eyes with a paper napkin. "She and I have been friends since we were kids. How could this have happened?" "That's what I'm trying to find out," Tambo replied calmly, taking a seat across from her. "When was the last time you saw or spoke to Shaniqua?" "Yesterday afternoon. We went shopping together. She bought new makeup for her broadcasts." "And you haven't spoken to her today?" Zendaya shook her head. "No, I was at work until 6, then I went straight to my nephew's birthday party. I didn't get home until around 10 at night." "Do you have someone who can confirm your whereabouts?" Zendaya's tense. "You think I—" She didn't finish the sentence, then nodded. "Of course I do. My entire family, and dozens of time-stamped photos from the holiday." During an argument with her husband, Shaniqua mentioned that Luttrell frequented your place. Is that true? Zendaya's cheeks flushed slightly. "Yes, he came by. We're friends. It's nothing like that." "Nothing like that?" Tambo raised an eyebrow. Shaniqua seemed to think otherwise. "Look," Zendaya straightened up, "he and Luttrell were having problems long before he started dropping in on me. He needed someone to talk to." "And how close were those conversations?" Zendaya looked away. "We're just friends." Tambo decided to change tactics. "Where do you think Luttrell might be right now?" "I don't know. Big Mike's bar, maybe? That's his favorite place." "Have you seen him tonight? Say, between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock? Zendaya suddenly perked up. "Actually, I did. He called me from the bar about 9 o'clock at night, very upset. I told him not to drive in that condition. When I was driving home after my birthday party, around 9:20, I drove by Big Mike's and saw Luttrell there, out front. He was smoking and talking on the phone." "Are you sure it was 9:20? "Positive." I looked at my watch because I was afraid I'd missed the last bus. Tambo scrutinized Zendaya's face. If she was telling the truth, then Luttrell had an alibi for the time of the murder. But to trust the word of a suspect's potential mistress would be naive. "Do you have keys to Shaniqua's apartment?" Zendaya hesitated. "Yes, she gave me a spare set just in case. We often kept an eye on each other's apartments. Can I see them?" Zendaya reached up and pulled a bunch of keys out of a dresser drawer. "Here they are." Tambo took the keys and put them in a plastic evidence bag. "We're confiscating them for now. It's standard procedure." He asked a few more questions about Shaniqua and Luttrell's relationship, about their mutual friends and enemies, about possible problems the young woman had encountered. Zendaya answered willingly, but Tambo caught himself thinking that something in her demeanor alarmed him. It was as if she was playing the part of a grief-stricken friend, but some of the reactions were too rehearsed. Leaving Zendaya's apartment, the detective received a message from patrol officers. Luttrell Bradford had been located at Big Mike's bar and was being held for questioning. The bartender confirmed that Bradford had been there unmolested since 8 p.m. The interrogation room at the South Chicago police station was shabby and cramped. with a single window under the ceiling that didn't let in enough light. Latrell Bradford sat behind a metal desk with his arms wrapped around his head. An expression of shock and disbelief, mixed with the remnants of a groggy stupor, lingered in his eyes. Across from him sat Detective Obasi Tambo with a folder of documents. "I didn't kill her," Latrell repeated for the 100th time. "I swear on my life." Tambo opened the folder and pulled out printouts of witness statements. "The bartender at Big Mike's confirms that you showed up there around 8 p.m. and didn't leave the establishment until patrol arrived," the detective said, reviewing the tapes. "And we have 3 bar patrons who confirm the same thing, plus the security camera footage." "There you go!" Latrell raised his head. "I couldn't have done it. I was angry, yeah, upset. But kill Shaniqua? Never." Tambo pushed a glass of water toward him, which Latrell drained greedily. "Tell me again what happened after the quarrel." "I already told you," Latrell replied tiredly. "We had a fight. She accused me of having an affair with Zendaya. I walked out, slamming the door. I drove straight to the bar and started pouring whiskey over my resentment. Around 9 o'clock, I called Zendaya." "Why?" Tambo interrupted him. Latrell wrinkled his nose. "I wanted to explain myself, to tell her that there was nothing wrong between us, that none of it was true." "And it didn't?" Tambo stepped forward. Latrell lowered his gaze. "It did, once. I got drunk, and Zendaya? She made it clear a long time ago that she didn't mind. It was a mistake. I loved Shaniqua. Zendaya and I agreed to forget about it and never mention it. But Javante saw you leaving her, and he told Shaniqua. That damn junkie!" Latrell clenched his fists. "He'd always had a soft spot for her, always hanging around, complimenting me, offering his protection when I wasn't home." Tambo made a note in his notebook. "Did you call your wife after a fight? Tried to make up?" "No, I was too angry, and then too drunk." Latrell rubbed his face with his hands. "If I'd only known. God, if only I'd known." Tambo closed the file and stood up. "We'll come back to this later. I need to check on something." He left the interrogation room and headed for the lab where technicians were analyzing Shaniqua's broadcast recordings. "Show me the last 30 seconds of the second broadcast," he asked as he entered the room. "And turn up the volume. I want to hear every sound." The technician nodded and started the recording. On the screen, Shaniqua sat in front of the camera, explaining the situation to her audience. At one point, she stopped talking and turned her head as if she heard something. "Right there," Tambo pointed to the screen. "What did she hear?" The technician turned up the volume, and now a faint clinking sound came from the speakers, like the light clinking of metal objects. "Keys," Tambo said. "Someone came in with keys, it's not a break-in." "Who had keys to the apartment?" the technician asked. "The husband," Tambo answered, "and his best friend, Zendaya Klinskiles." He watched the tape further, listening to the sounds of footsteps, to muffled voices, to the moment the body hit and fell. Then Tambo suddenly froze, scrolled back through the tape, and listened again to the sequence of sounds. "Play it again," he asked, "and turn it up even louder." This time, when the tape reached the moment before the first blow, Tambo heard it, a slight, almost indistinguishable sound, like a click. "Zoom in on that part," he instructed. "Highlight just that sound." The technician complied with his request, and now the distinctive click sounded clearly in the silence of the laboratory. "A Zippo lighter," said Tambo. The sound was unmistakable. "The killer stopped to smoke before he struck?" wondered the technician. "No," Tambo shook his head. "It's a nervous tick. Javante Arimbo always flicks his lighter when he's nervous. I noticed it when I was talking to him." Tambo pulled out his cell phone and dialed a number. "I need a patrol at an address." He dictated the address of Shaniqua's house. "I need you to detain Javante Arimbo immediately. He's in his apartment across the street from the crime scene. Yeah, it's urgent." The investigation continued apace. At Javante's apartment, bloody clothes were found hidden at the bottom of a trash can. Blood tests confirmed that it belonged to Shaniqua Devro, and under the sink, they found the packaging of recently purchased gloves. Javante was clearly trying to cover his tracks. 24 hours after the murder, Tambo was back in the interrogation room, but now Javante Arimbo was across from him. His eyes were running around the room, His fingers involuntarily clenched, as if searching for the soothing lighter they had seized from him. "They were cheating on her," Javante suddenly blurted out after an hour of silence. "Both of them. Both her husband and her so-called best friend. Shaniqua deserved better." Tambo did not utter a word, allowing the suspect to speak. "I loved her," Javante continued, his eyes filling with tears. "For years, ever since she moved into the apartment across the hall. I watched over her, protected her, was there for her when that asshole disappeared all night. And yet, you killed her," Tambo said calmly. "It was an accident!" Javante slammed his fist on the table. "I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted to talk, to explain that Zendaya and Latrell were deceiving her together, that I'm the only one who really cares about her." "You used Zendaya's keys to get into the apartment?" Javante nodded. "I had the opportunity to make a duplicate. Zendaya once left her bag in Shaniqua's apartment when they were going to a party. I went in while they were putting on makeup and made a quick impression." "And what happened the evening of the day of the murder?" Javante took a deep breath. "I heard them arguing. Then I saw Latrell leave. Later, Shaniqua started a new broadcast. I watched it on my phone. She looked so unhappy, so vulnerable. I decided this was my chance. I went to her, to comfort her, to tell her the truth about Zendaya and Latrell. She wouldn't listen." Javante sounded desperate. "She said she loved her husband no matter what, that she was going to make peace with him, that I should leave them alone. And then she said," his voice trembled, "she said that if I didn't stop stalking her, she'd move out. That she and Latrell had been discussing moving to another neighborhood for a long time, and that Zendaya might buy their apartment when they left, and that made you angry. They were planning on keeping me, all three of them." Javante pounded the table again. "After everything I'd done for her. And worst of all, she was going to give her apartment to that lying snake Zendaya. And you killed her." "I don't remember grabbing the damn statue." Javante lowered his head. "It was on the shelf, some kind of reward for her blogging. She turned her back on me, kept telling me I should go away and leave them alone. And I just snapped." Javante fell silent. His shoulders slumped. "I realized right away what I'd done," he continued quietly. "I tried to stop the blood, but it was too late. Then I saw that the broadcast was still on, so I turned it off. I went back to my room, hid my clothes." He looked up at Tambo. "How did you know it was me?" "Your lighter," the detective replied. "You can't help flicking it when you're nervous." That sound made it onto the tape. Javante leaned back in his chair, a look of strange relief on his face. She'd never love me, would she? Even if she had left Latrell? Tambo didn't answer. He stood up, gathering his papers into a folder. "Javante Arimbo, you are under arrest for the murder of Shaniqua Devro." A few days later, Detective Tambo sat in his office reviewing the final case files. On the last page of the report, he wrote down the motives for the crime. Obsessive love turned to possessiveness, jealousy, betrayal, fear of loneliness. A common human tragedy of which he had seen many in his career. There was a knock at the door. A young female officer appeared on the doorstep. "Detective Tambo, Latrell Bradford and Zendaya Clinskiles are here to see you. They say you asked them to come in." Tambo nodded and closed the folder. "Show them in, please." Latrell and Zendaya entered the office. Both looked haggard and depressed. Latrell had lost a noticeable amount of weight over the days, and Zendaya's eyes were red from crying. "Have a seat." Tambo pointed to the chairs in front of his desk. "There's something you should know." He opened his laptop and showed them the statistics on viewing statistics of Shaniqua's broadcast recordings. The numbers were staggering. Millions of views, tens of thousands of comments. "Shaniqua's story is going viral," Tambo said. "The national media has already picked up the story. Soon you're going to be the center of attention whether you want it or not." "Why are you showing this to us?" Zendaya asked quietly. "Because there are nuances to the case that will soon become public," Tambo replied, folding his hands on the table. "Your affair, for example." Latrell and Zendaya exchanged glances. "I'm not proud of it," Latrell said. "It was a mistake." "A one-time mistake?" Tambo looked questioningly at Zendaya. She fidgeted in her chair. You know very well it wasn't, Detective. Luttrell needed someone to talk to. His marriage to Shaniqua had been in trouble for a long time. She was obsessed with her broadcasts, her dreams of fame, and you took advantage of that. Tambo finished for her. Yes, Zendaya didn't deny it. But I never wanted to hurt her. I never wanted her dead. And you lied to me about seeing Luttrell at the bar at 9:20. Yes, Zendaya admitted again. I was scared. I thought he'd be accused of murder. I wanted to give him an alibi just in case. But the bar cameras and witness statements confirmed it anyway, Tambo pointed out. Your lie was unnecessary. I didn't know there were cameras, Zendaya muttered. Tambo slammed the laptop shut. The press likes to dig through dirty laundry. Journalists will look for any detail, any gossip. You both haven't behaved in the best of ways, but I don't think you deserve the hell you're about to go through. What are you suggesting? Luttrell asked. Leave town, both of you, separately. Start a new life somewhere far away from here. But everyone will think we ran away out of guilt, Zendaya objected. People will always think what they want, Tambo said calmly. But trust my experience, staying here will be worse. Much worse. When they left, Tambo went to the window and looked out at the street, where reporters were already gathering at the entrance to the police station. A tiny tragedy in a tiny apartment in a troubled Chicago neighborhood was turning into a national sensation. The tragedy of Shaniqua Devereaux took on a life of its own. Her last broadcast, her dreams of a better life, her relationships, all became public knowledge. Talk shows discussed domestic violence, the dangers of social media, and toxic relationships. Bloggers analyzed both broadcasts, trying to pinpoint the moment when Yvonne appeared in the apartment, and analyzed Shaniqua's expression when she heard the key in the lock. 2 weeks after the murder, a national television channel aired a special report on Shaniqua, calling her a tragic icon of the social media era. Her Facebook account reached 1 million followers, a number she could only have dreamed of in her lifetime. Her posts were studied in college media studies and contemporary culture sociology courses. Detective Tambo watched this phenomenon with bitter irony. Shaniqua Devereaux achieved the fame she dreamed of, but paid the ultimate price. And there was a particular tragedy in this. Even in death, she was exploited, turned into a fleeting sensation, a commodity to be consumed by millions of strangers. Somewhere on the outskirts of Chicago, a small cemetery received another body. No cameras, no broadcasts, no millions of viewers. Just another wasted life in a city where such stories happen every day.